And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth, a great day with a great controversy arising and involving danger for Americans in uniform and for Americans at home as well. What is the danger? The danger, another major confrontation, perhaps even another brief war, and it would be brief. It would not be a long-term war, I do not believe, with Iran. We will take a look at that and what is going on. We'll also take a look at the new Gaza Peace Board that the president is putting together to try to create a lasting peace between, or at least a ceasefire between Israel and the cold-blooded terrorists in Hamas. We'll be speaking to Michael Rubin of the American Enterprise Institute coming up. But first of all, this controversy, which is heating about Washington taking over the national elections. We focused a little bit earlier in the show on the fact that there are some election reforms that are overwhelmingly popular, not just with Republicans, but with Republicans and Democrats as well. Things like requiring some kind of certification, some kind of public identification with a photo in it. It's like a driver's license before you go out to vote. But that works, and the overwhelming majority of Americans support that. But what they don't support is the effort which appears to be supported by Steve Bannon. That's in clip 9. He was appearing on Real America's Voice and talking about using ICE, which has quite a reputation now across the country, as a means of discouraging people from actually coming out and voting. Here is Steve Bannon, notorious podcaster, former political director for the Trump campaign back in 2016. Clip 9.
You're damn right. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never again allow an election to be stolen.
Okay, again, what's amazing here is that Steve Bannon, like the president himself, like so many other people, try to convey the idea that there is no question that not the last election, not the election before that, but the election in 2020, that election was stolen, despite the fact that there were 7 million more votes that were cast across the country for Joe Biden than for Donald Trump at that particular time. And the idea that ICE officers, having them patrol the streets on Election Day, will prevent an election theft when there have been literally billions of dollars spent and attempts on people on all sides of the political spectrum to try to investigate that charge of a stolen election in 2020. And it's just not true. And then meanwhile, is this just a way of taking, as Steve Bannon wants to do, attention away from the souring sense of the country about the President Trump's leadership of the economy? The two big issues that helped to win him the presidency and win him back the presidency back in 2024 were the economy and immigration. Now, immigration meant border security to most people. It did not necessarily mean mass deportation. And the economy, despite the fact that President Trump talks constantly about how great it is and how wonderful it is and how booming we are, we're the envy of the whole world and we're the hottest country anywhere. Despite that, Karl Rove, veteran Republican strategist, slammed the way that President Trump is presenting the economy. And he did that in his capacity as a contributor to Fox News.
He's making the same mistake Joe Biden made. Bidenomics is working. That piece in the Wall Street Journal is the economy is great. That's not what people feel. Last year, we lost 70,000 manufacturing jobs. We lost 145,000 blue-collar jobs. There's a great deck put out today by the Washington consultant and prognosticator Bruce Millman. Blue-collar consumer confidence is at a record low since 1976 when they began asking the question. The top 20% of the American population is responsible for 75% of the GDP. The bottom 80% is responsible for 25% of the GDP. The lower-income households are bearing a bigger burden of inflation because the things that they have to pay for, like rent and utilities, have risen higher.
These are factors not just for people who are experts and analysts. They're factors for the majority of Americans. A majority of Americans now say, according to a YouGov poll, and actually many others, that the economy is worse today under Trump than it was under Biden. And meanwhile, there is continued disappointment and concern about the operations of ICE in Minnesota and elsewhere. And basically to try to hold up this idea that what ICE is really doing is fighting against terrorists, domestic terrorists, that people who oppose what ICE is doing are people who are agitators and paid agitators. Kash Patel went on Fox News, the head of the FBI, the very ill-chosen head of the FBI, and he basically said that, look, they're not trying to do anything else like deport those 3,000 people every day that were part of the Steve Miller quota that was set up by the White House. What we're really trying to do is, well, here's Kash Patel, clip 13.
I said you cannot bring a firearm to a public protest and incite violence. That's the kicker. President Trump's administration is the most pro-Second Amendment administration in history. All we are saying is, one, it's a question of law. Did you incite violence or commit another crime while in possession of a firearm? And if that's the case, then we're going to investigate you. But the other question is a prudential one. Should you be bringing firearms? That's not a decision for the FBI to places where people are protesting. That's a prudential decision. We will follow the facts and the law.
Okay, we'll follow the facts and the law. So what happened with all those people, and there were many of them, who invaded the Capitol building carrying firearms? They all got pardoned, even if they brought firearms where you're not supposed to have them. And the double standard is profound. Multiple individuals present at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021 were armed with guns, according to federal court records, law enforcement testimony, and convictions. And while some supporters of former President Trump have claimed that the crowd was unarmed, evidence shows that at least dozens of people possessed or used weapons, including firearms, stun guns, bear spray, and other dangerous objects on or around the Capitol grounds on that dreary, dismal, depressing, and horrifying day. Speaking of dreary and depressing and horrifying, what is going on most recently with the approaching conflict with Iran? We'll be talking to Michael Rubin about what exactly is happening and where we go from here. That's coming up on The Medved Show.
Sign up today for our free weekly newsletter at michaelmedved.com.
Michael Rubin has been a frequent guest, I'm honored to say, on this radio show. He is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he specializes in Iran, Turkey, and the broader Middle East. He's also a former Pentagon official who has lived in post-revolution Iran. By the way, when you use that term post-revolution, did we just have a failed revolution in Iran, or is there going to be more unrest threatening Khamenei and his regime?
You know, Michael, that's a great question. At the very least, it looks like the revolution is on pause, but it's very hard to believe that those who have had family members killed are going to so easily accept the reimposition of power. Of course, there's a ticking clock here because the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is almost 87 years old. And so the question I have is whether people are just putting it on ice until he's out of the picture, and then all hell will break loose.
And what about the relationship with the United States? We have a continued military buildup in Iran. I believe that we recently shot down a drone that was aimed at the aircraft carrier, USS Abraham Lincoln. What is going on with the possibility of a new military confrontation between the two countries?
Well, first of all, of course, I'm not Iran's lawyer, but I suspect what they were using that drone for was less to attack the ship and more to conduct surveillance to figure out where our ships were. That said, what I worry most is that Donald Trump, in his enthusiasm to have a deal, is falling into a trap when he goes into negotiations in Istanbul on Friday, because so many of the mediators, including Qatar and Turkey itself, don't want a regime change in Iran. And look, my rule of thumb when it comes to mediation is you never want to use a mediator that wants to see you lose. So I suspect that while we look for how to get to yes in a deal, the Iranians tend to look at diplomacy as an asymmetric warfare strategy to tie the Americans down while the Iranians can rebuild their capabilities.
And you say that that same rule that you're talking about, you never want somebody to join in mediation who has a stake in seeing that mediation fail. I've written a piece recently, which is eye-opening, about the so-called peace board that President Trump has put together that is supposed to govern the territory of Gaza now that there's a ceasefire. Is it a good idea that President Trump has invited both China and Russia to participate in this peace board?
No, I don't. And look, it's the general idea that a big tent may sound good in theory, but too many cooks spoil the broth. And of course, in the article to which you're referring, Michael, I was bringing up the Reagan-era case of the multinational force of observers. We all remember, for example, how you had the Camp David Accords that brought peace between Israel and Egypt. And as part of that, there was the question about how you were going to have peacekeeping, how you were going to have observation, especially in the Sinai, which Israel had committed to withdraw from. What Ronald Reagan said is we're not going to use the United Nations because we all know the problems with the United Nations. We also aren't going to invite Russia and China in because, or at the time the Soviet Union, because they don't want to see us win. They want to have a Trojan horse in this. So he created something called the Multinational Force of Observers, which basically only had people that were truly committed to Egypt-Israel peace. And to this day, even opponents to Ronald Reagan acknowledge that of all the peacekeeping missions in the world, the Multinational Force of Observers has been the most successful, precisely because it didn't try to have a big tent or bring the Communist Chinese or the Russians in.
So what does President Trump need to do to guarantee similar kinds of effectiveness with the peace board that is supposed to govern Gaza?
Look, I have no problem with a symbolic board that would show diplomatic legitimacy that a number of people are buying into this. The problem becomes when you want to give every person a say for $1 billion and everyone is working towards different aims. My broader problem with Donald Trump's approach to Gaza is, look, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And when you're a real estate developer, everything becomes about development. But the problem in the Gaza Strip has never been development. It's been the ideology which not only Hamas, but the broader Palestinian public there embrace. And until you do something to combat that ideology, you're still going to have a major problem when it comes to the future of Gaza and Arab-Israeli peace.
And what could be done to try to recalibrate this peace board and the efforts at a lasting ceasefire and a lasting peace?
You know, rather than have $1 billion be the entry fee, I would like to see a commitment to have people on the ground to disarm Hamas. Because until Hamas is disarmed, you're simply not going to be able to be successful in the Gaza Strip.
And that is a perspective that people need to take very seriously. What about the possibilities of war between U.S. and Iran now?
I think that it's actually increasing, because one thing Donald Trump shows is even if Turkey and others are trying to run down the clock, Donald Trump shows that he doesn't have the patience of a traditional diplomat, and therefore the Iranians need to be very concerned. What I worry about, though, is what would the targets be if the goal is to punish the massacres of civilians?
That is a question that time will answer, one assumes. Thanks to Michael Rubin, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Michael Medved Official, for more conversations with people of the caliber of Michael Rubin and more information and your participation in our YouTube channel. No cost to you, but great benefit. Coming up on the Medved Show, there is a political film, I guess it's political, that has been proclaimed as one of the most remarkable films ever made. In fact, hailed as the worst movie ever made. And a very well-known star with a lot of charisma. We will get to that mystery and to that challenge and to more coming up as we continue the Michael Medved Show. We have several new videos on our YouTube channel. What about the Trump plan to give $2,000 to every American based upon our tariffs and money that's been brought in? What makes a great president? With Bret Baier of Fox News, an interview on Theodore Roosevelt and his special meaning for today. Plus a brand new video on the history of socialism in this country, what buried that political alternative. That and more at the michaelmedved.com. You can find it, and once you watch our new YouTube channel, subscribe to it and join us.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.